How can a young man keep his way pure, undefiled, clean from all of the sin and filth of this world? Sounds like a question that is impossible to answer. How can a young man keep his way pure? God says you can. Sounds impossible? All things are possible with God. Here we find in Psalm 119, verse 9, that is the very question this opens with. How can a young man at a pivotal age, of course, before he sets the course of his life, before his patterns of behavior have become well sunk, how can he keep his way pure? Answer: by keeping it according to your word. The number of sinful patterns and behaviors and consequences that can be avoided in life simply by adhering to the Word of God is incalculable. You can't sort out all that math. There is tremendous benefit in following after the Lord. He's not content to stick with that. He says in verse 10, "With all my heart I have sought you. Do not let me wander from your commandments." Here is a person who is devoted to following God, to knowing His Word, and to try and walk in an upright manner. And he says, I've sought you with all my heart. Now, I love the second half of this. It's almost like he's singing a modern praise song that's kind of like over the top in its expression of devotion. And then he backs it up here a little bit and adds an important caveat. Do not let me wander from your commandments. Why would we wander? Same reason all of us wander. He is concerned with, we can wander because we have a loss of motivation. We can wander because we have a lack of discipline. We can wander away from the Lord simply in the most general sense because we have a lust, a strong desire for other things. We've found that truth is boring to us, and so now we will take whatever thing happens to gather our attention. Now, you could be set on your course, you could be seeking after the Lord, and then you get distracted with something as simple as your cell phone. Happens to me all the time. I wish I could say it wasn't true, but there are so many times I'm doing quite well and going along in a good pace, maybe working and studying and things like that, and then you get a text. And that text turns into a text conversation with somebody maybe, or a phone call, or a distraction, or they say something in that text that makes me look something up, and now I'm off the trail, unproductive, and wandering. Not necessarily doing anything sinful, not necessarily doing something at least as we would look at it as sinful, the way we categorize things so often, but we wander out. We get away from that place of blessing from the Lord. Don't let me wander. I am seeking after you, but there is a wandering sheep-like nature in me that wants to go out and find some new greenery and try to find something else. Don't let me do that. He's recognizing the limitations of his own sinful nature and his own desire to follow after God. A lot of times we find ourselves there, don't we? We're in a good place, and we have a strong desire to stay there, to not wander. This is a prayer journal. The Psalms are loaded with just an ongoing prayer journal of the deepest desires of the heart of the child of God. He continues in verse 11 by saying, "Your word I have treasured in my heart." He's made the Word of God so important to him that he's internalized it. He's internalized it, kind of like a song. You know, if you hear an old beat or an old rhythm, and all of a sudden you start remembering some song, and you actually remember where you were when you first heard the song, or when you used to sing the song a lot, or whatever it is. That old beat can trigger a whole series of thoughts and can take you back. When you internalize the Word, when you truly treasure it and internalize it, now all kinds of things can make you go right back to that place. This is how he is able to say with confidence that a young man can keep his way pure. If you internalize, you treasure the Word of God and internalize it, you will find that your way will be quite clean from all the defilement of this world. And notice he doesn't stop with just saying, I've treasured your word in my heart. Some people have done that, and they've done that for wrong reasons. Maybe they've treasured the word of God in their heart and even internalized it because they want to win an argument. They want to be right. They want to have the right kind of theology to bludgeon people with. It sounds terrible, but it's oftentimes the case. Many people know their Bible very well, and yet they're not really getting the point. Here he says, adding a gloss to that in verse 11, the second half of the verse where he says this, I've treasured your word in my heart that I may not sin against you. I don't want anything to sever the relationship and the joy I have in fellowship with God. That's why I want to know the Bible. Not so I can be right. Not so I can look down on other people. What an absurd response that is. My desire is to know the Word of God so that I can stay near to Him, close to Him. I don't want to do anything that would provoke me or push me in a direction of sinning against Him, severing that relationship in some way. So then he rightly sings a bit of a doxology here in verse 12 when he says, Blessed are you, O Lord. He's now praising the Lord. Teach me your statutes. He recognizes the need for God to open his eyes to understand the Scriptures. He's limited in his capacity to get it. And we all are aware of this. We start reading through a text or studying it and digging into it, and we still don't get it. I still need the Lord to teach me. Verse 13, continuing, he says, With my lips I've told of all the ordinances of your mouth. Here we have evangelism. And evangelism, telling others about God, that is motivated by a zealous love for God. With my lips I've told others of all your ordinances, of all that your word says. What kind of person is that? You ever watched Ray Comfort? I don't know if you've ever seen this guy. He's a fantastic evangelist for Christ. Zealous to tell others about the Lord. He doesn't know quit. I love that guy. He has this infectious desire to share of the truth that God has opened his mind to, and he doesn't want to contain it. What is it that would motivate a child of God to properly tell others? Love. You love God, so how do you not speak of him? We all speak of the things we love, and our mouths betray that. Verse 14, he says, I have rejoiced in the way of your testimonies as much as in all riches. Now there's kind of a gut check. A lot of people might say they've rejoiced in the way of God's testimony. So when you see somebody walking in the way, when you see somebody living right, proclaiming the truth and evangelizing and all that, that ought to make your heart sing. It ought to make you a kindred spirit with them. But then he adds that last part of the verse, as much as in all riches. That's the extent of the celebration. If somebody were to walk in the room and give you $10,000, how much are you going to celebrate? Just randomly. How much are you going to celebrate with that? How much do you celebrate when you see righteousness being exalted? Verse 15, I will meditate on your precepts and regard your ways. Meditating on the precepts of God is that idea of pondering and thinking and stewing on the thoughts of God long enough that it starts to rewire the way I'm thinking. There's a lot of incredible truth in the Word of God, and if we just do our morning devotions, powering through and trying to get through a text or something like that, I would imagine that we're just not taking the time to let it sink in to the point where it starts to mess up the other plans I might have had for the day. Meditating on the Word of God, pondering what's being said rather than just eat, chew, swallow, move on. No. Sit there in it. Think about it long enough that it starts to change your day, change your thoughts. Verse 16, I shall delight in your statutes. I shall not forget your word. Remember, he said back in verse 10, don't let me wander. Now here in verse 16, he's resolved. He's gotten to the place where he's saying, I'm resolved, I'm determined now to walk in what you have given me. May that be our determination as we live just today. Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't let all the fears and concerns of all the things going on around us overwhelm. Instead, consider today. What's the right choice I need to make right now in my life and walk with God? I would tell you, resolve to delight yourself in the Word of God, and don't forget His Word. Don't neglect it. Don't allow it to slip from your mind. Daily digestion of the Word. Hope this has been helpful. We'll see you next time.